Hello, welcome everybody. In this video, I will follow the procedure I posted on the course website to set up the emulate with the RSLinx, Studio5000, and FactoryTalk view. I'm going to demonstrate the procedure, and also I will emphasize a few things because from what I saw in the lab, right? So first, when you look at this picture, I'm showing you the final result, right? So after we set up the running environment, we should have a Studio5000 Logix emulate to replace the PLC. So this is like the virtual PLC. Then from the Studio5000 Logix Designer, you can download, you can see the path here, download to the emulator. So then you can see the Logix is running, right? So that's from the PLC side. And then on the HMI, you can run the interface, right? So that's similar to what you saw in the lab room, right? So you can see the select switch being closed, then that will affect on the PLC, and then the output on the red light will turn on the HMI, right? Also, there's one thing I want to emphasize. First thing I want to emphasize, you can see here, is there's number 8 in there. That represent the slot number on here, right? So because you have your PLC set up on slot number 8, right? So remember we talk about the concept of modular PLC, right? So this is the first thing I want to emphasize. All right, let me bring up the emulate first, right? So at the beginning, when you run the emulate, I'll put over here. So you can see this is the beginning, right? So once you start the emulate, you don't have any, suppose you don't have any controller or any module created, but you do have the what we have the first 2 slots being occupied. So first one is the RSLinx. This is the communication driver for the PLC. And then you have the FactoryTalk links. This is the communication driver for the HMI. All right, so later on we will see that how it works, right? Of course, you have more modules over here. You have 17 slots, right, available. You don't need to have all of them. You can create any slot with the controller. So, for example, over here, if I right-click slot number 3, I can even skip slot number 2. Right-click, create, then suppose you can set up the emulator on this particular slot, right? Sometimes may slow, yeah, it's okay. Over here, pop up. You just need to accept any configurations on the setting, and then you should have a controller create on slot number 3. All right. So if you run into any problem, this emulate software used to be very unstable. There are lots of bugs, but right now I think this is very good version now. It's pretty stable. It should be okay with that, right? Notice here on this picture, I show you on slot 8, right? So I'm going to create another one. So notice there you can have more than one PLC controller created with the emulator, right? So the reason I want to create number 8, later on you will see that the file I send to you guys use the controller on slot number 8, right? So that's why I need to create this one on the slot number 8. So this is how you can create emulator controllers, right? Don't worry about the blinking line over here, the light over here, it's just a battery, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about this. So this is basically the first section about the emulate software, right? Also over here, if you remove that, I don't see that very relevant now. Like I said, it's becoming pretty stable now. All right. Then let's look at section 2. With section 2, right? So RSLinx, right? So you need to use RSLinx to set up the communication driver. Right? So this concept is, I can use an analogy to describe this. So think about on your computer, when you need to connect to the, for example, a new printer, right? Sometimes it's very easy, plug and play, right? So once you plug in, the computer can automatically update the driver, and then you can print out like without any configuration on your side. But they do have some situation you have to go in to configure what kind of printer you're gonna try to communicate. Is it the just black and white print, or maybe the color printer, or like something like that, right? So you understand what I'm saying, because you're handling with different kind of machine, right? You have to have a communication to set it up. Same thing for the PLC, right? So right now we create a emulate controller, right? So that's totally different from the real PLC. So we have to let the communication driver being set up in order to talk to the emulator, right? So in order to save time, I already start the RSLinx on my laptop. So you can see here, I can bring it up. So what you have on the RSLinx is that you need to click the communications on the menu, and the configure drivers will do the trick, right? So right now you can see I totally wipe out everything, right? So it's just a blank, right? So first thing you want to do is to click the available driver types. Like I said, there are all kinds of equipment you can communicate with that, right? So for example, right, if you want to communicate with a real PLC, like in the lab room with the Ethernet, right, Ethernet IP, so you need to configure this, right? Click and add new, just accept the name, you don't have to change it. Click OK, then you can see here, right? It very likely will ask you the IP address because they are on the network. We talk about that in the lecture, right? So for example, very likely you will see this kind of the IP address 192.168, right? So this is the subnet address reserved for the private network, right? So for example, you have to set up this IP address in order to set up this drive, right? Right now it's running. So this is the Ethernet IP driver to communicate the real PLC on the network. Now we want to set up the communication to the emulator, right? The emulator, we just set it up like this, right? That's the one we just created. So that has to be a different type. So you have to click this pull down arrow to find the one we're looking for, virtual backplane. So it is a virtual backplane, right? So you can see different slots, right? Click on that, then add new. Again, accept the name. So over here, that's something you have to be aware. This is the first thing I want to emphasize, right? We talk about the modular PLC concept. You can see here, we have a virtual backplane. We have different slots, right? Now we have the RSLinx to communicate with this virtual backplane. As I mentioned before, RSLinx is on the slot number 0, right? That's the driver by default to communicate with PLC. So we want to keep this slot number at 0. So that point to here. So accept the slot 0. Now it's running, you can close it. So you can verify if it's working, all right? If you go to communication, RS-who, once you have this window open, you can see here, you have 2 drivers, right? First one is Ethernet IP, like I said, that's for the PLC, real PLC on the network. This one, virtual backplane. You can see right away, you have slot 3, slot 8. So that's exactly what we set up on the virtual backplane on here, right? So that is corresponding to the settings on here. So you need to be clear in your mind on here, all right? So this is the second second part to set up the RSLinx. So notice here, right? So you only need to set up once, right? You only need to set up this communication driver once, right? So you don't have to set up every time when you try to download. Once you set up, it will keep the configuration, and then you can continue use for the future downloads, right? Then let's look at the next page. On the next page, it's the PLC project file. You need to reconfigure it and download to the emulate. So this is something that Rockwell didn't help a lot, right? So if you watch my other videos, I mentioned this. There's a bug right now in this current version. So the current version doesn't have the emulate on the list of change controllers, but it has emulator on the new project list. So that means normally from the older version, right? I used that before. With the project file open, you can directly change the controller type from the real PLC to the emulator, but it doesn't appear on the current versions. But luckily, they still keep the emulate option for the new project. So that's why we need to go around this problem, right? So what can we go around is to use the feature for the export and import, right? So I'm going to show you what you need to know about this, all right? So this is a little bit confusing, all right? So in the lab, I can see some of you don't really understand what we're doing on here. Right now, I have the here. I have this project file open. You should have a very, very similar file like this, all right? So this is our lab 1, create the logic around here. And then notice here, we have the PLC controller. This is a 1756 L81. L81, that's the real PLC controller, right? So if you want to change to emulator, suppose the old version, suppose you can directly go to this, select emulator on this list. But right now you can see here, there's no emulator on this list. So this way it's being shut down. There's no way we can do it directly. So what we need to do is to create another file, right? So I'm gonna keep this file in here, right? So to compare with that, this is our original file created in the lab. Then we need to create a new one, right? So I suggest you to create this one with the name emulate in that, right? So in this way, you know this is a emulator file, all right? So this is the second thing I want to emphasize. You need create a different file, right? It's a totally different. This is a brand new, nothing in it, right? So we need to transfer what we have created in the lab into emulator, right? So what we can do is to export what we have over here into this project file. So you can work at home. So once you have something you work on here, you may do the opposite. You can also export what you had at home into the file. Then you can download to the PLC in the lab to work on that. So in this way, you can have this transfer utility. I don't know what should you call that, but you can move things around. All right. So this is what you need to do for the second part. Right, just I want to emphasize this, right? So if you look at the PDF, right, so this is some procedures. I gave you the details, all right, but now I can just show you the real steps with software, right? So over here again, this is a emulator file, and this is a PLC file. I'll refer this as a PLC file. Right. So from this PLC file, if you right-click the program, you can export, import in different ways. but this is one way I prefer you to start with. So if you right click, there's an option called export program, right? You export logic and routines and tags all together, right? So yeah, I think I did that before, but I can create it in different location, so you can see that clearly on here. So um, that is the name, right? You don't need to change it. So I want to create that on the desktop, right? So you can click export, right? So once you did this, if you look at your desktop, that's here. You can see here, right? That's the name main program dot L5X. So that's the file you just created from your PLC, all right? PLC file. Then on here, this emulate got nothing in it. You can see here, logic empty, tag empty, controller tag nothing. It's just blank, right? So with here, you can go in to select file, and from file you can choose the import component, right? So we just did a program, right? So you choose program, then you browse on the desktop the file, and then click open. So just accept the default, right? It's basically uh, the, the, the routines and the tags. You can see here, right? The tags pop up and program pop up, right? So everything is the same as the original PLC file, except this one you create as a emulate, right? So I think I skipped the part, right? So that's the part if you follow this, right? So click file on the menu bar, you choose new, then on the pop-up, then you can find emulate. So I just skip this step on this demo, you should be able to find out, right? Like I said, you cannot change type, but you can create a brand new with the 5000 emulate. Right, so that's the key for to understand this process. So once we have the emulator file created, that's what you have on here, right? And then you can go to communications and go to who active. That's basically same as the RSLinx. Remember what we saw on RSLinx, right? Virtual backplane, slot 3, slot 8, right? So somehow it got a little bit stuck over here. I'll let it to run. You can see here, right? You have two PLCs. One is on slot 3, one is on slot 8. So you need to know where you want to download, right? And for now, I want you to choose the slot 8. Somehow it doesn't allow me to do that. Let me do it again, all right? So go to communications and slot 8. Right, so this time allow me to choose slot 8. Like I said, it's that like typical Windows application. Sometimes it has a bug, and sometimes it just freeze, and you have to just use the common sense to handle with that. Now you can download, right? You have to download on that particular slot in order to make the HMI to work with that. So after you download, just like a real PLC, right? You will see that whole process. Then you have to set up in the run mode. As you set up in the run mode, you can test your logic right away. You don't even need the HMI to test that. I'm going to show you that because you can see when you are online, you have the green bar being highlighted on the rail. Also, you can toggle the toggle instructions to check the logic, right? So that means it's half is already done because PLC can now, Studio5000 can talk to the emulator now. So this is the half of the communication. The other half is just from the HMI, right? I'm just keep talking and fill in the gap. Right now you're in program mode, right? So you need to set that into run mode. We already practiced in the lab. Once you set it into run mode, you will see the highlight, right? Right now there's no highlight. Highlight coming back right now, right? Yeah, you can see here. So I'm gonna make it bigger. You can see that. So this is what I mean. you can see the highlight bars, right? So if you toggle it, right click, toggle, so you can see the red light turn on, right? Then if you Control T, that will toggle again, green light will turn on. So right now, your PLC is running with the emulate, right? So again, this is from your emulate file, not the original file. You have two different files. Then let's work on the section 4, right? It's quite a procedure. Right now, like I show you on the first page, you are setting up this virtual running environment, right? So you have to work with all this software together. So with the section 4, remember that I asked you to create this file in the lab intro, right? So you can try it now, follow this. It should work, but from what I see, depends on the computer, you may run into problem. So this is why I need to demonstrate the rest of the procedure. You need to work on the FactoryTalk View Studio to fix the problem, right? Even though I haven't talked about that on the lecture, sorry to throw you in the deep end, but at the beginning of the semester, right? So, but we have to work with this current COVID-19 situation. So if you couldn't get it work, all right, just need to work on this. All right. So you need to open the FactoryTalk View Studio and to set up to make sure the communication, right? So let me show you what I mean by here. So I already opened the software. So this is the FactoryTalk View Studio. It's opened. So then you need to go down here, find the FactoryTalk View, and then double click the communication setup. Some of you may have problem with the installation. It won't show up properly, like over here. This is not too bad. All right, so it's a small, but let me see here. Yeah, you can see here, this window is a little bit weird, right? It didn't show up in the normal size. All right, but what I need to do is that I already create this name on here. You don't need to change it. Then you just need to highlight slot 8 because you download on the slot 8. Right. If you want to use slot 3, you need to change your PLC and also change your HMI. Right. So this is the concept put into practical use. Right. So also sometimes first time you don't see all your PLCs, you just need to right click this backplane and start browse. So this time maybe I can see, yeah, slot 3 is also here, slot A is here. Then click apply and copy this button, click OK. You have to follow everything like I put it onto the file procedure, click OK. Right. So this is one step. You need to set up the communication from your HMI to the virtual PLC. Right. This is a different software package now. Right. So once we set up, you don't have to create. Sometimes I think depends on the installation. You may have a problem on the runtime, but you can choose another option. Right. So this is the second point I want to emphasize. You can choose this test application. You don't have to choose the create. All right. So let me click on this. It will basically go through similar steps to create a runtime file. It will show up eventually. It probably will go through a fairly long process, depends on your computer. It may take a little bit longer time. All right, I'll just keep talking, fill in the blank. I don't know if you can see that on here. That's a problem. Yeah, I know. Right now I'm using the Zoom to show the this interface. I don't know what's gonna show up on the Zoom recording, all right? But on my laptop right now, you can see this interface show up, right? Okay, so this is the communication for the HMI. Yeah, right now I'm not even sure that can be show up on the Zoom recording. All right, maybe I can just stop and show it on the second video. All right. Hello everyone. Let's continue. Let me continue from the previous video. Like I said, I wasn't sure if you can see this running result, right? Because I had some experience with the Zoom recording. It will not show up once I start the test application. All right. But anyway, this is what you're supposed to see. All right. So this is the studio you set up, and then you use the test application, right? So, and then this is what you're supposed to see on here. Let me rearrange everything, and then you can see the final result on here. So you have the HMI on here, and then you have your emulator. Emulator you don't even need to see, but for demonstration purpose, then you have your Studio5000 download down there. So you have this running environment. Then let's try that test out. It's working, right? So you can see here, SS is open, then the green light is on. That's what you see on the HMI. Then when you press on here, you can see red light turn on. Yeah, red light turn on the HMI, green light turn off, right? So this is what you can achieve at the end of this procedure. Again, I want to show you again for that part of our procedure, just in case if you don't have this file. I already posted on the course website, right? So you can see here. And also, this is some reminder, right? So you can do some other things. You don't have to do it now. So just let you know, there are also other features you can take advantage of it. So anyway, three things I want to emphasize from this procedure. Let me repeat that. All right. First is that, let me get my pencil. Pay attention to the slot numbers, right? Which slot you have your PLC, you need to pay attention on that, right? It's just something you overlook, and then you will have a trouble, right? Then, because the bug exists in the RSLogix 5000, you need to do some export import, right? So this is some extra work, but you can do that once you go through once, you will understand this process. So export import, then you will have two different files. So one is the PLC project file, which you create in the lab. The other one you have to create new with the emulator controller. So that is the second thing I want to emphasize. All right. Third, the last thing is that if you couldn't get the runtime file to create or to run, so like over here, let me see. Yeah. So the runtime file you create from before, it couldn't work. Maybe there are some bugs, or maybe something with your installation. You can have another option called the called over here. Let me see. Test application, right? So test application is another way to have your HMI. So like what I just showed you on here. So I don't have the runtime created, but I test application can also show that result. All right. Okay. All right. Good luck with your setting up with the softwares. All right. I'll talk to you later.